Let's make a ring dish with dried flowers and resin using this mold. This is a mold from AAJ Molds, and it's a faceted circular ring dish, and it's really pretty. I was really surprised by the results, so I'm gonna go over how I made this ring dish. Before I pour my resin, I'm gonna clean my mold up. I just have a piece of packing tape and I'm pressing it along the inside of the mold to pick up any lint or hairs that are stuck on there. Now that my mold is ready, I'm stirring my resin and my hardener together. This is KS Resin Liquid Cast. It's the casting resin that I usually use for all my casting projects. And I've been stirring for about 2 to 3 minutes. It's about 150 mils total, so 75 mils of resin with 75 mils of hardener because it's a 1-to-1 ratio resin. And now that it's all mixed up, I'm gonna pour this first layer into my mold. I want it to be a little bit more than halfway. I just want it to cover the entire surface, including that middle part. I'm gonna let this resin sit for about 15 minutes so that all the bubbles can rise to the top. And I'll be pouring this ring dish in 2 layers. So this is day 1 and this is my first layer. It's been 15 minutes and you can see all the bubbles rose to the top and to the center. So now I'm grabbing my heat gun and I'm gonna do a quick pass of my heat gun over the resin to pop all the bubbles. Now I'm gonna start adding in my flowers. Make sure your flowers are dried. All of mine have been dried in silica, and this is a project for a client, and these are her wedding flowers. I actually had to use most of her flowers for a big block, so I only have a few little flowers left. And for the ring dish, in any kind of dish or tray that's very thin, you're gonna have to use petals or flat flowers because anything that's 3-dimensional won't fit in the mold. So I've kind of rummaged through her remaining flowers and I'm pulling out anything that looks flat or small enough to fit. And I took some of the stock flowers and pulled the petals apart so that I have more material to work with. I'm gonna start placing the petals in my mold first. So I have my popsicle stick and I've dipped a little bit of resin on the tip of the popsicle stick. And then I'm grabbing each petal and placing them around the edges first. And the resin on the stick will help grab the petal and put it in a little bit faster than if you were to use tweezers in this case. So I'm gonna continue to place those petals in until most of the layer is filled up with little petals. I'm leaving the center open so that I can place that bigger yellow butterfly ranunculus in the center of the dish. I'm gonna be using the nicer looking ranunculus, so I'm gonna place that face down in the center of my ring dish. And you can see it's missing some petals, and that's why I have a second flower on the table. I'm gonna use some of the good petals from that second flower to fill up the flower that I'm actually using in the dish. One of the petals came off of that flower, so I'm gonna place it where there's a gap. And then I'm gonna grab a petal from the flower on the table and then fill up the rest of the gaps so it looks like this is a full flower. That looks pretty good to me, so I'm gonna continue filling up the empty spaces with some of the purple stalk petals. Now I'm finished adding my flowers. I'm just gonna take my heat gun and go over the resin one last time to get rid of any bubbles that were created when I added the flowers. And I'll let this cure overnight and come back tomorrow and do a second layer. I'm here the next day and I've already mixed about 100 mils of resin. So that's 50 mils of hardener with 50 mils of resin mixed together in this measuring cup. And before I pour that into my mold, I'm gonna take the stem off of my ranunculus. So I'm just gonna bend it and it'll snap right off. And then I'm gonna pour my resin into the mold. Normally for this second layer, I would just leave it clear, not add any flowers. But you can kind of see when my first layer cured, some of the petals moved to the center. So I'm gonna grab a few more spare petals just to fill up the gaps a little bit nicer. As I'm placing the petals into my resin, I'm pushing it all the way down so that it's at the bottom of this layer. And this can be a little challenging, and that's why I don't recommend putting petals in the second layer because petals tend to float. So the challenge with putting petals in the second layer is that you might have petals that float and then cure that way and then stick out the back a little bit. In that case, you can always top coat the back, and to prevent a potential top coat, you can try to convince the petals to sink a little bit lower. So besides pushing them to the bottom when you place them in, you should also check on the resin as it's starting to cure and make sure none of them are floating at the top. And if they are, press them down a little bit because that will definitely help them sink lower. If you can manage to put all your flowers in the first layer and then just keep your second layer completely clear, that's usually the best way to do this. I'm gonna get my heat gun and put it over my resin to pop any bubbles in the layer, and then I'm gonna let my resin cure overnight, and I'll come back tomorrow and then demold to reveal the finished ring dish. I'm here the next day and my ring dish is all finished, and you can see how shiny and beautiful it is on the back. I do have a little bit of flowers sticking out, but it's actually not too bad because I did manage to press them in before the resin cured. So if it's sticking out a lot, I do recommend trying to top coat the back, which isn't too difficult. But now I'm gonna demold this ring dish and see how it came out. Here's how it looks in the sunlight, and all the facets are reflecting in the light. It's so beautiful. The petals are floating whimsically, and I love that. My client actually asked me to make 3 ring dishes for her, and I found this mold and thought, wow, this is really unique and adorable. And then I used it and I loved it even more. So I thought it would be really cool to share with you guys the process and how it came out. And I made a second ring dish for this project already, so I wanted to share that with you as well. And here it is. I'm gonna demold it. It's a different design. I used fewer petals and left a lot more negative space in this one. I went for a more minimal look. Here it is. It's very simple and elegant. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!